Come closer, children, and sit where the shade of this old olive still holds the coolness of the morning. The leaves above us have listened to many voices, and the earth beneath our feet has kept more secrets than any of us will ever number. Today I will tell you how the fields first learned to feed us, and how a goddess who had already suffered the deepest of losses chose, in the end, not to keep her knowledge locked inside her grief, but to place it into human hands. You already know how Demeter wandered the world in search of her stolen daughter, and how the earth itself withered beneath her sorrow until even the gods on high grew afraid. You know how Persephone was returned, yet not entirely, and how the seasons were born from that imperfect reunion. But the story does not end when the mother and daughter stood once more in the light. For Demeter, who had seen the whole world brought to the edge of starvation by her own withdrawal, understood that grief alone could not be the final word spoken over the land. She remained for a time at Eleusis, in the house of King Celeus and his wife Metaneira, the same household that had given her shelter when she still walked the earth disguised as a mortal woman worn down by loss. There, among people who had shown her kindness without knowing her true nature, something quiet and decisive took shape within her. She looked upon their sons and saw not merely children of a single royal house, but the possible future of every field that would ever be plowed, every seed that would ever be pressed into the soil by hopeful hands. It was to Triptolemus, the boy with the clear eyes and the steady spirit, that she chose to give the greater portion of her gift. She took him aside from the noise of the household and spoke to him as one who had once held the power of growth and decay in her own palms. She taught him the hidden language of the earth, how the soil must be broken at the proper hour, how the seed must be placed neither too deep nor too shallow, how the rains must be watched and the sun must be trusted, and how patience itself is a kind of prayer that the land answers in its own time. She showed him the difference between the wild grasses that feed only the wind and the cultivated grain that can feed a people through the long months of winter. She placed in his mind the knowledge of the plough, of the furrow, of the harvest sickle, and of the careful storing of the year's abundance, so that no child would have to go hungry when the cold returned. When the teaching was complete, Demeter did not simply send him away with words. She called forth a chariot unlike any that had ever touched the roads of men, a shining vehicle drawn by winged dragons, or, as some still insist, by serpents that moved through the air as easily as other creatures move across the ground. Into this chariot she lifted Triptolemus, and she spoke a final charge over him. "Go," she said, "and carry what I have given you to every shore and every valley where human voices rise in the morning. Teach them that the earth is not only a place of beauty and danger, but a partner that will answer care with abundance if it is treated with understanding. Do not keep this knowledge for one people alone. Let it travel as far as the winds can carry the seed." And so Triptolemus rose into the sky, the wings of his strange team beating against the bright air, and he began the long work of teaching. He flew first across the plains of Greece, then farther still to lands whose names were only rumors in the mouths of sailors. Wherever he landed, he stepped down among the people and showed them how to turn the wild earth into ordered fields. He taught kings and shepherds alike. He showed women how to grind the grain into flour and how to bake the first true loaves. He showed men how to mark the seasons not only by the stars, but by the rising of the green shoots and the heavy nodding of the ripe ears. And in every place he visited, the same quiet miracle occurred. The people who had once lived by hunting and gathering, never certain whether the next moon would find them fed or empty-handed, began to plant, to wait, and to harvest. Villages grew, storehouses filled. Children slept with fuller bellies, and the fear that had once walked beside every winter began, slowly, to loosen its grip. Yet the gift was never only practical. Demeter had placed inside the teaching a deeper truth. Every seed placed in the ground was also a small act of trust. Every harvest was a reminder that loss and return are woven together in the same cycle that rules the year. The people who learned from Triptolemus did not merely gain food, they gained a way of living that required them to look forward, to plan, to care for something beyond the needs of a single day. In this way, the goddess who had once nearly destroyed the world through grief became the quiet mother of settled life, of the village, of the shared table, and of the hope that tomorrow's bread might be more certain than today's. Triptolemus himself grew old in the service of that gift. Some say he returned at last to Eleusis and was welcomed there as a hero. Others claim he never ceased his journeys, and that even now, on certain clear evenings, one may still glimpse a distant chariot moving across the horizon, drawn by creatures that do not belong entirely to the earth. But whether he rests or still travels, the knowledge he carried remains. Every field of wheat, every orchard, every carefully tended garden is a living echo of the moment when Demeter decided that her sorrow would not be the end of the story, but the beginning of a longer and more generous one. Look around you now, children. The olive that shelters us was once a gift of another goddess, but the bread you will eat this evening, the grain that stands in the fields beyond this hill, the very idea that the earth can be asked to feed us year after year, these things come from the teaching that began at Eleusis. Remember that a goddess who had lost almost everything still chose to give. Remember that knowledge, once shared, cannot be taken back. And when you walk through the ripening fields in the late summer, think of Triptolemus in his winged chariot, and of Demeter standing at the edge of the world, watching the first true harvests rise where only wild grass had grown before. The shade has moved while I have spoken. The afternoon is advancing. Rise now and go carefully. Carry what you have heard the way Triptolemus once carried the gift of the grain, not as a private treasure, but as something meant to be passed on, season after season, as long as people still hunger and still hope.